Thank you so much for making time, Vicky. Much appreciated. It was yesterday that you did your masterclass, was it?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How did that go?
It was good.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
What did you cover?
Oh, what did I cover? Well, my setup, I'd say, is quite unique. I had a massive heart-shaped rack behind me with two gong toms, and then I had a kit and also loads of percussion, and it's quite unique percussion because some of it is percussion triggers and electronic percussion, which a lot of people haven't seen before. So I kind of covered hybrid percussion and how you can incorporate that into your live setups. And what I'm doing currently this year, I've been touring a lot with Anastacia, and I have that rig essentially on tour with me minus the kit. Yeah. So I just walked through what you can do with that setup basically, and then did a little performance, and then did some live looping with the percussion and the kit, and yeah, it was fun.
Amazing. I mean, that was something I was going to ask about, your kit, your setup. It's incredible to look at. It's elaborate. And because sometimes I speak to people that new drummers, and they're thinking, I want to try and slowly add components and lean into a hybrid kit, but I find it intimidating. I don't know where to start.
Right.
So what advice would you give to people looking to step into having a hybrid kit?
Do you mean hybrid as in adding percussion elements or adding triggers and electronic elements?
Everything.
Everything,
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think whenever I see a drummer have anything percussive added to the kit, like a cowbell from the bass drum, for example, or like a little, sometimes you can put a little tambourine on top of the hi-hat or stuff like that, I love it. And it just gives you another sound, another little palette that you can add to what you're doing. And I think it's a lot easier to be creative if you're adding these little bits and bobs. And there's so many cool attachments that you can have, or just have one other cymbal stand with some little wood blocks on there, or something like that. But start with one thing, and then just literally just have some fun with it, and really approach it from a place of let's play, let's just have fun with this, and let's see what I can come up with. And yeah, that's where I would probably start. Just add one thing, or maybe a drum pad if you want to have something more electronic. And pads and electronic stuff is really cool because you can apply any sound. Just one pad, you can apply any sound to that pad. So then you can change and chop and change things as you go.
Yeah. Off the back of that, I think when you start adding, whether it's percussion or triggers, something electronic, all of a sudden you're confronted with kind of limitless possibilities and sounds and combinations. How do you not get lost in that kind of sea of opportunity?
Well, you kind of do get lost. And then I think sometimes it's okay to get a bit lost, because that's a part of the creative process as well. But I understand why you're asking the question, because it can feel a little bit overwhelming, all of that. I think it depends on what you're doing. Like how my setup came about was because I had a set of songs that I needed to create parts for. So I think it's always good to have some sort of limitations. Do you have a specific gig that you are preparing something for? Okay, what are the songs? What does those songs require? So then you're already like working within a specific framework. So then it's a bit easier to not get lost, and maybe what you're trying to do is to recreate the parts that you're hearing on that record, whether that is a specific sound, like a specific clap sound, or a specific percussive sound, or a loop that you're trying to recreate or cut out from the record. There's like great AI tools today where you can cut out little bits and bobs. Like sometimes I sample stuff from records literally by using like AI, and I try to just cut out the drums. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, depending on the track. But I mess around with things like that. I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
but
it does, because it made me think about, because we've had drummers this weekend talk about even just with a traditional acoustic setup, there are already a lot of possibilities.
Yes.
But the focus should always be, as drummers and as musicians, the sound of the group, the band, and what
Yeah.
you need to contribute. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that I'm going to bring these things in and I'm going to play them no matter what. You can't tell me. It's about...
No, it always is. The music always comes first.
Yeah.
And that's how, although I now have this huge rig, I mean, I would never, the rig that had here yesterday, I would never get booked to do both kit and percussion and live looping as a session player. That's very rare.
Yeah.
That's more for masterclass purposes, educational purposes, where you can just show the full spectrum of opportunities,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But how a lot of that rig did come about, the percussive side of it, just came from listening to the songs. And I didn't think it was going to end up being as big as it was. But then there's another song, you're like, oh, but here I kind of need this sound. And what I was talking about yesterday in the masterclass is that the performance element is something that I find really fun and quite important on stage. So to create a setup for you where you feel like you can physically get involved in what you're doing, which is actually a little bit easier when you're doing percussion rather than kit, because you're standing up when you're playing percussion. So you can actually move a little bit more. And that's where, for example, my big gong toms that I have behind me on this big heart-shaped track, that's how they came about, because I just wanted something to be very physical on stage.
Yeah.
Because that adds to the audience experience as well. If they can see you really visually like play the parts. And another thing I was talking about in the masterclass was when you work with electronic elements, you can essentially do a lot of the stuff just from a SPDSX, just from a little pad. But often the audience can't connect with what you're doing because you can't see a tambourine sound being played if you play it from a pad. But if they see you hit a tambourine, it has a different impact. If you can see what you hear, then you can connect with it. So that's how I've tried to also build my whole rig. Yeah. And I have a trigger on my tambourine, so I can add the perfect effects depending on what songs to the tambourine, instead of just doing that from a pad, for example.
And all of that philosophy and approach, how did that lock in with the gig you have with Anastacia? Like, did you bring that to her and say, this is how I think my rig should be? Or did she make any requests or recommendations?
Well, our brief was sort of like, this is her 25th anniversary tour. Mm-hmm. She wants to switch up the songs. So we had 5 days in a studio with the new band where we were workshopping the songs. And I thought, great, that means that I get to sort of bring a little bit of my own flavor and own ideas. And a lot of her songs don't have percussion on them. So I had to sort of come up with my own parts and try to just figure out something that fit with what the music was. And obviously I didn't know how the music was going to develop. So my prep for it, I did put in a lot of prep before those rehearsals just to come up with different ideas that I could bring to the table. Because I know when you're in that rehearsal space, you might run a song once, twice, and then that's it. Then you go, okay, this is what we're doing. Because you don't have time to spend hours and hours on just one song. So that's why you need to do a lot of personal prep before you go into a situation like that. So you know that you can, depending on what everyone else is doing in the room, you go, okay, this is the sprinkle, because as a percussionist, it's the sprinkle on top, you know. This is the sprinkle that works in this setting. But if I don't have those sounds programmed, or if I don't have that ready to pull out of the basket, then I can't contribute with that. Yeah. And then once you've sort of created that and recorded that. She wasn't actually in those initial rehearsals. She was back in the US. But once that's recorded and sent over to her, if she agrees to it, that's kind of set. Yeah. So I can't then come back a week later and go, oh, I got some more ideas, you know? Yeah. So it's the prep ahead of rehearsals is actually the most important time, I think, personal prep.
By what you said, was the band then based in the UK?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a UK-based band, and then and so how does it work? Was there a phase when you rehearsed with Anastacia?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. But that was just before the tour
I see,
started.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
A few days before the tour started, did rehearsals and a production rehearsal, and off we went on a 2-month tour.
And so, earlier you mentioned the word brief. Was it literally just kind of like Anastasia's vision of what she would want these reinterpretations of songs to be like, and then you guys had scope to explore that?
Yes, yeah, pretty much. She got together with her MD and the manager, and they sort of brainstormed what songs would be good to put on this 25th anniversary tour. And then she put forward like her vision, and then the MD tried to give us some type of mock-ups even ahead of those sessions, just to get us all in the same frame of mind. And then everybody sort of then brought their own ideas to the table, and then we just tried out different things in the studio and sent them to her. And if she liked it, great, moved on to the next one. Or then she might have said, okay, I like this, but can you try to change this thing around? But that meant that after that week in the studio, we all had a very good idea of what the tour was going to sound like. So then when we went into rehearsals, we already knew what we were doing.
Right. Incredible. A slight change of pace, because you're a very content-forward drummer. I think you've got a great YouTube channel where you regularly post original content and music videos of yourself playing. And there were a couple that I wanted to ask you about. There's one where you're performing. Is it on a frozen lake?
Yeah, it's on the sea. It's on the frozen
sea.
Baltic Sea, actually.
Okay. And then there's another one. Is it a stone circle?
Yeah, in Suffolk. Yeah.
Could you? I'm out of curiosity. What drew you to play in these sort of unconventional places?
I think they are beautiful. Like the environments are just so cool. To be able to perform outside has always been something that I love doing. And whenever with Anastacia, we've done some gorgeous festivals right by the sea or outside, and they are always my favorite shows. And I just really wanted to create something different, something unique, and figure out with the tech, because all my stuff is quite techy and quite electronic, how to be able to do that outdoors when you don't have access to to power, for example, out on a frozen lake. Of course you don't. So how do you do it? Because I had a full electronic drum kit there. I had Ableton. I had a laptop. Everything I was doing was pretty much electronic. But the key that made that all possible for me is an Irish company called MyVolts, who creates these cables called rip cords, which basically converts what you would usually have to plug in to a wall. You can just plug that into a power bank instead. So that means that V-Drums kit, I can just plug into a power bank. So then I can bring that anywhere outdoors. And the same with my laptop and and Push, which is like my controller for Ableton and so on. So it's finding the gear that enables you to do cool things like that. And live looping has always kind of been a hobby of mine, because I get booked as a session drummer. I'm yet to be booked to really do any live looping in the session world. So that's always been something that I just think is really fun to do and explore.
For sure. I mean, I was going to ask if there were any other settings that you wanted to record in.
Yeah, like so many.
Yeah?
Like I want to do that all over the world. It's actually like a dream of mine to be able to just travel to like really cool places in Norway, for example, the Trolltunga, like some of these like unique locations that everyone knows about, and be able to set up a live looping performance there and have a drone that films it along with close-up shots. And I am actually going to Vietnam on a little tour in March next year, and my plan is definitely there to do another performance piece like that. But there's a lot of prep that goes into these performance pieces, so I just need to have the time to carve out, because you want to do it well once you do it, and often there's a lot of limitations, because you kind of need to get just that one take perfect. So often you end up recording quite a few takes just to make sure you get it right. So, and there's so many times when I've tried to do stuff like that where you realize that, oh, one camera died, that was really important. Oh, I forgot to press record, or, you know, there's so many little bits and bobs that can go wrong, or then that one loop I didn't do correctly, or, you know, then my performance wasn't the best on that take. So there's a lot of things that need to sort of come together for a video like that to turn out well.
Because I get that's the added challenge, right? Because if you're in a studio recording, you just grab another battery, you just fix the issue. But if you're in the middle of
nowhere, And also I was quite worried when I did the Frozen one because it was bloody freezing outside. I wore like snowboard boots and I had to play with gloves on as well, which is really hard. To know whether the electronic equipment could actually handle the cold, because I know that batteries die way quicker. You might have noticed that on your phones, you know, if you're out in the cold, the batteries die way quicker. So just to like not know if the batteries were gonna last, because once that's done, that's done. You can't go back home and charge it because it's gonna be dark by the time you go back out. You know?
How cold was it?
Probably like -15. Yeah.
You're very brave.
I'm from Finland, so I'm used to it.
Traveling the world, I was in South America. You took a trip to South America, and I think you've said that was quite an enlightening experience for you. Am I right in saying that sort of awoke a sort of a love for music, that trip? Is it music in general, specifically kind of Latin music that you would find in South America?
I think it was actually the love of drums and drumming, because I started playing drums really late. I started when I was really late, but I started when I was 19, and a lot of people start when they are young kids. But then I also teach people that started in their 60s, which is awesome. So it's never too late. But that trip was a backpacking trip that I did when I had finished school. I had a place in a university to study political history. I was on a very different trajectory in life. And then I just heard all these incredible rhythms everywhere. And I have very much been in love with Latin music ever since that trip. But it was the drums that I was so drawn to. And I would often find myself with a pair of bongos or just whatever drums I could find on a beach somewhere and just tap along and just love it. So when I came back home from that trip, something was awakened in me that I had to explore. And I found a music school in Finland where I could study pop and rock music. And I started taking drum lessons there. And then that sort of changed the whole path of my life. And I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, and I think you're such a great example to people in the drumming community that if you're going down a particular path, you're getting a degree in something, you're not necessarily locked into that. You know, if you don't want to be, you can absolutely change.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Going back to your YouTube channel and kind of the online presence you have, which I think you've done a great job in curating. Where does that stand in your mind in terms of priority of like putting that content out? Because you're also very into education and sharing knowledge. Is putting content out something that you think is very important for you to do?
It goes in waves and it goes in projects, and I would actually say that I don't really prioritize my YouTube channel as much because I never really managed to build a massive following there. So Instagram is a channel that I prioritize more. That's where I have more interactions. That's where I have a bigger following. And I think actually when I first started the YouTube channel, it was a bit like daunting because I put so much work into it initially. And I just never got the following that I was hoping to get. And then I couldn't quite justify in my head all the work that I put in. And it's so hard actually to grow a following online. And I still don't really have a big following comparing to a lot of people on there. And now I have a quite different approach to it. I sort of get involved in projects. Like I've just done a big project with Zoom, field recorders, or they do loads of products, but that's what they're most famous for. This summer when I've been on tour, and every city we've gone to, I've gone out and I've recorded sounds from that city, and then I've turned them into pieces of music. And that was a quite big campaign to do. But when I have a project like that, then I'm very consistent with my posting and everything I'm doing. But then that project just finished, so now I don't really have a plan for my social media until the next project will come along. So it sort of goes in waves. But I still try to put up at least a couple of posts per week just to update people with what I'm up to and what I'm doing.
I mean, on that point, I was going to ask, what are you up to these days, and what are you doing? Are there any projects that you're currently working on?
So this whole year has sort of definitely been taken over by this 25th year anniversary tour. And I haven't had much headspace for anything else, and that literally just finished before this drum show.
Right.
And then I just got into prepping for this masterclass.
Yeah.
So when I'm gonna come back home from here, I'm gonna be like, oh my God, that was an intense year. So much fun, but very intense. And I actually get a little bit of a breathing space after this. I have one TV show that I'm doing in Finland in a couple of weeks' time, which is gonna be fun. And then the beginning of the year is still quite open. Just before Christmas, I do loads of corporate events in London. So that's kind of like bread and butter gigs back in London. And then in March, I'm going to Vietnam on a little tour with my live looping duo. And we're hoping to also film some cool videos like these ones that we were just talking about. And then we have another tour booked in with Anastacia in September, October, and a few gigs booked in the summer.
Okay. Yeah. It's still quite a busy schedule.
I guess, yeah. And I actually recently did a gig that was something new for me and really scary for me with an orchestra in Finland. Mm-hmm. It was a 160-piece orchestra, massive.
Wow.
And I was booked as a MIDI percussionist. And they were looking for someone that could program a bunch of sounds, read scores, follow a conductor, and have an electronic setup that fits in the world of orchestras. Mm-hmm. The last time I worked with an orchestra is over 10 years ago when I was doing a couple of shows with Hans Zimmer. Mm-hmm. But we were all on click, and it was a very different experience to not have a metronome and just follow a conductor, because I'm so used to pop and gigs and always work like that kind of world and always working with a click track. So where the timing is in the group is never an issue. But then when you have a massive orchestra like that in a massive concert hall, I was so confused by how fluid the timing was. And I was the kit player that was driving the whole orchestra. But it was a very intimidating but exciting experience at the same time. And that gig only came around like 10 days before it happened. And it was one of Finland's biggest bands called Nightwish. It was their music that was performed by an orchestra. And it was a world premiere, and it was a big deal in Finland, and And I was just thrown into this situation. And I was on tour the whole time when I got the gig. So I had to take some like magnetic triggers with me on tour and set up like this. I had pieces of cardboard that I attached these triggers to in my hotel room. And I was prepping in my hotel room everywhere we went just to try to get ready for this like very daunting gig that I had ahead of me. But then it actually went really well, and it was amazing, and it was so much fun. But that was a very new experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So is it intentionally part of the music for the rhythm to kind of shift like that without the click?
I think just when you work with orchestras, is just a different rhythm to it in general. It is more fluid. It's not as set. It's not as funky and groovy that I'm used to.
Yeah.
It just goes a little bit like this. And then it was, because I have so little experience working in that context, it was sort of figuring out, how much do I now take control and charge in this situation. I'm like, here's the tempo, everybody follow me. Or how much do I try to follow the fluidity of what's going on? Because if I follow that too much, we're gonna end up somewhere we don't want to be, But I'm also new in that context, so I don't want to take up too much space and think everybody needs to follow what I'm doing. So it's different. It's a very different world to work in, the world of orchestras, from the world of pop.
Yeah.
and so is the world of jazz. So, you know, and it's about getting to understand the code of how those different worlds are run. If that makes sense.
So did you have to adapt your mindset and approach when you were in the moment playing with the orchestra at all?
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like I just had to learn so quickly how that world works, literally on the spot. And because we had one rehearsal and then it was the world premieres. I was just chucked in there and going, and we never even ran through all the songs before we then performed it in front of you know, everybody. Wow. And I was like, this is so scary. But I love those experiences. I'm terrified, but I love them because that's when you grow the most as a player. And every time that's happened to me throughout my career, when feel like I've been really thrown in the deep end, that's when I look back and I'm like, that's where I really stepped into some bigger shoes. Because the one thing you can't do is that you can't fail. In that moment, that's the one thing you can't do. So you have to just do whatever you can to prepare yourself to be ready for that situation.
Can that be mentally exhausting, having that kind of pressure?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, how do you deal with that?
I just try to like ground myself, I guess, as much as possible, and don't freak out and just know, because I've sort of been through that process enough times now to know that somehow it will always work out in the end. And that feeling with the butterflies and the slight anxiousness and I don't feel hungry and all of those things, you kind of get used to that feeling after a while and know that that's okay, that's normal. And that's probably actually what's going to make me play a bit better, because it puts me on the edge of like, I have to just be on this. So somehow I get a kick out of that as well in a weird way.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I guess that little bit of adrenaline just keeps you kind of on the edge and kind of ready to go.
Yeah, and now that's sort of opened a new world for me, because there are talks about more of those shows coming up, and then the arranger for all of those compositions, he's talking about potentially getting me involved in some other work in the cinematic world of orchestras, and that's really exciting for me. So it's like once you also step into a new world, there can potentially be loads more work coming in that world. Yeah.
Nice. If anyone has any questions they want to ask Vicky, now's the time. Otherwise, I can keep going.
If someone was starting out in percussion, what would be your advice to them? You know, to learn and to grow in that field. Advice.
I would say if you can find a teacher that you connect with, that inspires you, that would be amazing. Because I've definitely had, I've had drum teachers, because my first instrument was drums, and percussion sort of came in later in my life. But without my first drum teacher, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. So to have that constant person that follows your journey and that you're also accountable for to progress, I kind of need that in my life to get better. I need accountability, which is these days is mainly a gig. I need to show up to a rehearsal and know what I'm doing. But back then it was a teacher, and I still book sessions with teachers or different mentors. Sometimes it's just a one-off, sometimes it's more when I feel like I'm stuck in an area and I want to grow. So trying to find someone that you connect with, and I think that's really important, because it can be an amazing player, but however they are sharing their knowledge might not work for you. And online, you can do those things quite easily today. And I've been doing loads of teaching and learning online as well. So then the whole world opens up for who you can find that you might connect with, that might be that person. And then I think just go to live gigs is such a great thing as well, and just get inspired. Like, seek out what you want to get good at and then just surround yourself by that as much as possible. And one of the best teachers is also music, as in find the music that you want to be able to play and just rinse it, just listen to it over and over and over again and figure out what those parts are. And at first when you might listen to something, especially if you're a beginner, it might be hard to even dissect, and especially on percussion, often percussion is quite hidden in the mix, so you might be like, well, I don't even hear any percussion here. Then you listen to it again, then you listen to it 10 times, you go, wait, I can hear something I didn't hear 10 times ago. I can hear this part that is up there in the top end that was sort of hidden, and you develop your ears massively doing that. So listening to music that you love and try to work out what the parts are in that music, and then just play along to that music as well, or create your own parts. That's what's so fun with percussion. You can add percussion to anything. So just put on music that you like and just play what you like. There's no right or wrong. I think we get so caught up with I most certainly have, and I still do, where it's like, oh, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing? Is this correct? Is this correct? There is no such thing. If you enjoy it, if it feels good, it's right.
It's just a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You're doing that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Yeah.
One of the workshop artists earlier, James, was talking very quickly about how he was playing guitar and he knew quite quickly that he really disliked it and switched to drums.
Right.
So with that in mind and your conversation earlier about starting when you were 19, just thinking back to that, was it quite an instant click for you? Like, did you start on a drum kit and quite quickly integrate percussion as well, or was it? I'm just interested in how that, because your setup is so unique. It's also visually so engaging, and as a colourist, I was just drawn to it in a way that, in a really unique way that I haven't sort of usually seen. And I'm just interested further at that beginning point for you when you were 19, and if you started on kit and then sort of slowly introduced that hybrid, or was it quite an instant click for you?
No, that's been a long journey. That's been like a 15-year journey for sure. And when I first started, it was on the kit, and it was the drum teacher in this school that I went to in Finland. I actually started taking drums as a side instrument, because piano, I had been playing classical piano since I was a kid, so that was all I sort of knew. So I had piano as my main instrument, started taking drum lessons on the side, but they were just speaking to me. I can't even explain it. It was this like thing that I was just so drawn to. And that in combination with having a good and really encouraging and inspiring teacher that kept saying, you know, if you put in the work into this, like you could really go places with this. And to just have someone that gives you that confidence of like, wow, okay, then you just want to do more of it. But it was all just kit. Then I found a school in the UK, which is now BIM. I applied, did a diploma there, and then stayed on for 2 more years and got a degree from there. But it was all kit up until that point. And then when I started working, it was still kit. And then slowly, I actually got an audition to play percussion for a DJ live, like house music along with the DJ. I didn't know what house music was when I got the audition, because that's not very big in Finland. So I had to Google it, and then I completely blanked it. I was like, congas, I can't play congas, but I kind of need the money. So I'm just gonna go for it and see what happens. But so much with being on stage is also about personality and about enjoying yourself, and I think I sort of blagged my way through that, just having a great time on stage, so they could see that I was a great performer, not necessarily the best player at the time, but that's how percussion started to get introduced into my life. And then gradually people started knowing me as a percussionist for that, so then I got booked for another thing on percussion, and there was definitely a time where I was booked way more to do percussion than kit. And then I sort of had to step back and go, whoa. I still love playing the kit, but in this circle in London, now everyone just knows me as a percussionist, which I actually don't even feel as confident on, because I have a degree in kit playing. I have a great foundation there, but the percussion stuff, I'm just blagging. and I'm just sort of figuring out as I go along. So then I quite actively then started to post stuff online with me playing kit, just to show that that's also an element of what I do. And then gradually, then those two worlds kind of came together to this massive setup that you see now, which I only do in educational and masterclass settings, but I love it. It's so much fun.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Well,
Vicky.
thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. We've recorded all this, so we'll share it on our socials in case you want to watch it back. But yeah,
Great.
thank you for coming as well.
Wow, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.